At 8:47 that morning, Daniel Carter stood frozen in the middle of the company lobby, his shirt soaked from the rain, his shoes covered in mud, and a small streak of blood visible on his sleeve. He was already 47 minutes late, and everyone in the lobby could see it. What they could not see was the unconscious old man Daniel had left behind in an ambulance only minutes earlier. He had stopped on his way to work when he saw a stranger collapse on the sidewalk, and without thinking about his job, his reputation, or the consequences, he had run toward him. Now, as Daniel stepped into the elevator, he had no idea that the CEO waiting upstairs was about to humiliate him in front of the entire department, and that by the end of the day, she would discover exactly why he had been late. Daniel was a single father who had learned to live with very little. Every morning began before sunrise. He prepared breakfast for his 8-year-old daughter Lily, packed her lunch, checked her school bag, and made sure she had her favorite blue hair ribbon before leaving for work. His life was exhausting, but he never complained. After losing his wife 3 years earlier, Daniel had become both mother and father to Lily, and every decision he made was about giving her a stable future. His job at a powerful technology company was not glamorous. He worked as a senior maintenance technician, fixing electrical systems, machinery, and whatever else stopped working inside the enormous corporate building. The salary was enough to keep food on the table, pay rent, and cover Lily's school expenses, but there was never much left over. That morning, everything had gone wrong. Lily had woken up with tears in her eyes because she could not find her school project. Daniel had searched through drawers, under the sofa, and inside her backpack until he finally found it beneath the kitchen table. By the time he got her to school, traffic had become a nightmare because heavy rain had flooded several roads. Daniel was already late when he finally turned onto the street leading toward his office. Then, less than 2 blocks from the company, he saw an elderly man collapse beside a bus stop. People walked around him. Cars passed. Some looked but kept moving. Daniel slammed on his brakes. He ran through the rain and dropped to his knees beside the man. The stranger was barely breathing. Daniel checked for a pulse and immediately called emergency services. The operator instructed him to begin chest compressions. Daniel followed every instruction while rain poured over his face. His hands shook, his knees hurt against the pavement, and his mind kept screaming that he was going to lose his job, but he refused to stop. When the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics rushed the elderly man inside. One of them told Daniel that those extra minutes might have made the difference between life and death. Daniel watched the ambulance disappear down the street before looking at his watch. 8:32. He was supposed to be at work at 8. Daniel ran the rest of the way. If you believe that kindness still matters, that people deserve second chances, and that doing the right thing should never be forgotten, please take a moment to like this story, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to SoulTales for more emotional stories like this one. When Daniel entered the executive conference room 47 minutes late, the weekly operations meeting had already started. The company's CEO, Victoria Reynolds, stood at the front of the room. She was known for being brilliant, demanding, and almost impossible to impress. She had built the company from a small startup into a multi-million-dollar corporation, and she expected absolute discipline from everyone beneath her. The moment Daniel walked through the door, every conversation stopped. Victoria looked at his wet clothes, muddy shoes, and blood-stained sleeve before looking at the clock. Her expression hardened. Daniel tried to explain, but Victoria did not let him finish. She accused him of disrespecting the company and wasting everyone's time. In front of senior managers and department heads, she told him that personal problems were not an excuse for professional failure. Daniel stood there silently, swallowing his embarrassment. He wanted to tell her what had happened, but something stopped him. The old man's condition was private. Daniel did not want praise for helping someone. He only wanted the man to survive. Victoria then made the decision that crushed him. She announced that Daniel was being removed from his senior position and transferred to a lower-paying maintenance role. The room went silent. Daniel's face fell, because he knew exactly what that meant. His rent was already due. Lily's school payment was coming next week. His savings were almost gone. He simply nodded and walked out. Later that afternoon, Daniel sat alone inside a small maintenance room, staring at the new assignment sheet in his hands. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel defeated. He thought about Lily waiting for him at home, probably excited to show him the drawing she had made at school. He thought about the bills stacked on his kitchen counter. He thought about how one decision made in less than 5 minutes could change everything. But then his phone rang. It was Lily's school. Daniel's heart dropped. The teacher explained that Lily had forgotten her lunch, and although the school had given her something to eat, she had been crying because she was worried her father might be angry. Daniel closed his eyes and fought back tears. Even after everything that had happened, he could not allow his daughter to see him broken. He picked her up after work and smiled as if nothing was wrong. That evening, while Daniel helped Lily with her homework, Victoria was still thinking about him. She had expected him to argue, complain, or beg for his position back. Instead, he had quietly accepted the punishment. Something about that bothered her. Then, the next morning, her assistant entered the office carrying a report from the local hospital. The elderly man Daniel had helped had survived. His name was Harold Bennett, a retired engineer and one of the company's earliest investors. Victoria recognized the name immediately. Harold was not just a stranger from the street. He was the man whose investment had helped her company survive its most difficult year. And according to the hospital report, Harold had suffered a severe cardiac event. The paramedics had told his family that the person who performed CPR before the ambulance arrived had likely saved his life. Victoria asked for the location where Harold had collapsed. The assistant showed her a security recording from a nearby building. Victoria watched the footage. There was Daniel. Running through the rain. Dropping beside Harold. Performing CPR. Refusing to leave until the ambulance arrived. Victoria watched the entire recording without saying a word. Then she looked at the clock on her desk. She remembered Daniel standing in front of her, soaked and humiliated. She remembered accusing him of not caring about his job. And suddenly, the truth hit her harder than anything else could have. He had been late because he had cared about someone else's life more than his own. Victoria immediately drove to the hospital. Harold was awake, weak but smiling. When Victoria told him what she had done to Daniel, his expression changed. He quietly told her that the man who saved his life had reminded him of something he had forgotten over the years, that success meant nothing if a person stopped caring about others. Victoria left the hospital with tears in her eyes. The next morning, Daniel was repairing a broken machine in the maintenance area when Victoria appeared. Everyone expected another reprimand. Instead, she stood in front of him and admitted that she had been wrong. She restored his senior position, apologized publicly, and offered him a promotion. Daniel looked at her for a long moment before saying that he did not need a promotion. He only wanted enough to take care of Lily and keep doing his job properly. Victoria told him that was exactly why he deserved it. But the biggest surprise came when she announced that the company would create a new emergency assistance program for employees who helped people during accidents or medical emergencies, ensuring that no employee would ever again be punished for stopping to save a life. Daniel went home that evening carrying a small box of groceries and a new school backpack for Lily. When she ran toward him, he dropped everything and hugged her tightly. She asked why he looked so happy. Daniel smiled and told her that sometimes doing the right thing can make life harder before it makes life better. Lily looked up at him and asked if he had done something good that day. Daniel kissed her forehead and simply said, "I tried." And that was enough. If this story touched your heart, please support SoulTales by liking the video, sharing it with someone who believes kindness matters, and subscribing to the channel. Sometimes one small act of compassion can change a stranger's life, and sometimes it can change your own. Before we end, I want you to leave one simple word in the comments: kindness. Let it be a reminder that we should never judge someone before knowing the battle they are fighting. Because Daniel was late that morning. He lost his position. He was humiliated in front of everyone. But while the world saw a man who had failed to arrive on time, one dying stranger saw a man who refused to walk away. And sometimes, the person everyone judges for being late is actually the person who arrived exactly when someone needed him most.